Okay, I think we'll make a start. So welcome to anyone that's joining us this evening. Just a quick note for housekeeping, if you could keep your microphone muted, and there will be an opportunity at the end to ask some questions. And actually, if you have any questions, the best way to address those is to type in the Q&A box that's at the bottom of the screen. We won't be monitoring the chat box, so if we could just stick to the Q&A, or you could, I believe there's a way you can raise your hand so that we'll know we can come to you, and then you can unmute the mic when it gets to that point in the presentation. So I wanted to welcome Rosa Milito. She's joining us this evening from DSRA Architecture in Halifax. And she's going to be providing a presentation on maintenance plans for your heritage property. And this is the second webinar that we've been holding. The first one was a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, so thank you, Rosa.
Okay, so my name is Rosa Milito, and a little brief of just a brief of my background a little bit. So I'm an architect with working for over 25 years with a background in Europe. And I have also conservation expertise. I have a PhD in conservation. My training and working experience started in Italy. And then after a few years, I moved to Ireland and UK, and the UK, London. I worked there for a few years. So now it's a few years, 7 years, or 7-8 years that I work and live in Canada, different cities, starting in Toronto, and now I established myself in Halifax in Nova Scotia. So that's always working as a conservation architect, with dealing with different kind of range of cultural heritage resources. And I also volunteer for a few organizations, including ICOMOS, and currently I'm working at projects investigating the interaction between cultural heritage and climate change. That's one of the focus of the volunteering currently. So let's start the webinar, the presentation. Why it doesn't go? Sorry, there is a problem here. Doesn't move. Ah, okay. So I need to do it. Okay. Okay. So a brief outline of the topic of the presentation for this evening. The topic is maintenance plan. So we are gonna discuss, first of all, what we maintain and why we maintain cultural heritage. So what we mean for cultural heritage and why we maintain it, we preserve and maintain, and what are the benefits. Then talking a little bit more getting a little bit more into our built heritage, that's the object of the maintenance plan, and also a brief overview of conservation principles and approaches. Then talking more related more into more specifically about the maintenance. There are reasons why we defer maintenance most of the times, and the focus would be here trying to explain why do we need a maintenance plan and what the maintenance plan will address. And then I hope by the end of the presentation, everyone will be convinced that we need to have a maintenance plan for our heritage property. But that's, we'll see. This doesn't work. Okay, one moment. Okay. So first of all, introducing what we maintain. What we mean for cultural heritage. Cultural heritage is basically is places with a cultural significance and heritage significance to people. So there is always the connection between people and places. that makes that significant. So a place can be of local significance, can be of provincial, of international or national or international significance, according to what it represents and what the significance that is embedded into it, and to whom the significance is important. Then I'm not gonna talk about this, of course, but this is just to introduce what we are talking about. So places are not only buildings. Places are cultural landscape. In this photo, we can see Cape Blomidon, which is relevant, and it's in your area, and there is a lot of heritage in this cultural landscape. There is the indigeneity, the importance to the indigenous people, and there is also the importance to the Acadian. So it's a cultural landscape that embraces significance. Some intangible and some tangible, of course, in the features of the landscape. There are urban landscape, town, most talking about town, but can be also downtown of big cities or areas of cities. There are heritage districts, kind of more specific, a few areas of urban development, urban cities or towns. This, what we see here, is a heritage district in Halifax, is Smithville, but for the heritage districts, not only what is designated, we can say the old part, or the part that holds some significance to us. There are engineering works that sometimes is identified as a cultural heritage, and there is a lot of to name one close to the area is the dikes in Grand Pré. So all the system, all the irrigation system, it's a part of engineering work, which is also cultural heritage. And beside, there are archaeological sites. In this case, is also the Acadian dikes. Then also, let's get more into buildings. That's what we are talking today. We have a number of different buildings, different types of buildings that are also identified, can be identified as having as cultural heritage, so as being cultural significance to the people. There's public buildings, military structure, industrial sites. This is Pier 22 is just an area in the city of Halifax, in the port, in the harbor. Then there are private buildings. Probably what we are more, the discussion will be more addressing those. There are religious buildings, churches, and museum, and so on and so forth. So let's I hope I'm not going too fast here. If anybody has a question or something, that just we can discuss that. So let's talk now about why we need to preserve the buildings, the heritage properties, and the benefit of preserving. So a few of the benefits are very obvious. I mean, kind of obvious. So of course, wherever we have old buildings and people can walk, there is a sense of belonging to a place. There is a sense of connection between people and place, and that makes the space and the city or the town more sustainable, just for people to live in. Then there is another reason, which is more related to to the financial benefit return. So there is a protection of the investment. Each and every property owner have done investments, financial investment in their property. So it seems fair and important to protect it in order to have a return of the investment or maintain that investment. Then we have seen that preservation of heritage property, of historic property, also contribute to sustainable development targets. And there is a kind of a lot of research and literature around it. One of the key the reason is that we definitely contribute to lessen carbon emission, to conserve and preserve embodied energy, but there are also reduced waste and so on, but there are many. Then of course a heritage building can develop economic well-being of communities. There is just to name one is cultural tourism. That it's like the case of Lunenburg, you know, it's a World Heritage Site, the town, and is attracting tourism, and this is supporting the local economy and the local culture. One thing that it's important to understand is the interconnection between benefits of heritage conservation. So we have talked. So we have at the center of the diagram here is the well-being of people and of the land, and then we can see how those economic benefit, cultural benefit, and sustainable development benefit contribute all together and often are interrelated to enable this well-being of our environment and of our community and of even single people. So I think a few facts here. We have I already mentioned before, so it's just the connection to places and past, how our past is embedded in what we recognize as a cultural heritage. Then the interaction between the well-being of cultural heritage people and land as multiple facets, as we can see. Historical places contribute to achieving sustainable development goals and climate change targets. And also historical places contribute to economic growth. If we talk about all this, so some of the cultural benefits are into the transmission and protection of traditional knowledge, enhancing the sense of belonging of a community to a wider community, enhancing the sense of place, and then connection, contributing to climate change adaptation pathway. And here there are studies that get deep into it. I think in the resource area, we put a few studies. There are a few studies and contribution that done by ICOMOS on those topics, and then you email me. I can give you send you some links. Of course, there is on the sustainable side, there is the contribution to the life cycle assessment and circular economy intersect. Reduction of carbon emission, just because we are reusing elements and components and systems that have already been built and produced, and reducing waste as well. And economic benefit includes, I mean, then reducing waste is part of economic benefit, but also there is the attraction of investment, there is cultural tourism, there is the inclusion and social inclusion and cohesion that is definitely generated by places where the presence of cultural heritage is significant. Then, of course, there is in town, small places, there is the concept and the main street approach that can foster economic development and local businesses. There are a few examples here in Nova Scotia and generally in North American cities. Then, so we have so far we talked about why we need to preserve, and what. Let's say that there are also a number of tools and a number of policies for protection of heritage properties. The main legislation is the Nova Scotia Heritage Property Act provincial. So most of the heritage properties are can be designated, provincially designated under this heritage conservation, under the Nova Scotia Heritage Property Act, which actually identify two types of designation. One is for heritage conservation districts, and one is for single properties. I mean, here is not the place to get deep into this. However, there is having those designation. It's kind of a tool to protect, but it's also a tool for the people to enhance and gain economic benefits from and other benefits from their investment, from their properties. It's quite common that in area where heritage conservation districts are in place, the property value is enhanced, just because the state of condition and the business and the local economy is more it's enhanced, and it's growing around those properties. So this is something that is very common in cities, and it's also common in let's say more rural areas. Of course, there are when we talk about district, we talk about ensembles, we talk about a group of buildings. So some of them are more relevant and more significant than others. However, all of these buildings have a contribution to that sense of place and to that sense of belonging to the community. We are now, I think we should get a little bit more into, so it is important to maintain, of course, a state of good repair of those properties, even only in terms of financial investments. These are more talking more about buildings, so you know, lighthouse or church of buildings or museum are part of our heritage, but also common houses or a barn, which is a vernacular type of architecture, is also part of our landscape and our heritage conservation districts. I mean, and as such is to be maintained. At this point, I'd like to talk a little bit what we mean when we say maintaining the heritage, the cultural significance. I mean, it's a concept that needs to be clarified, and also needs to be connected to the use of the building. So okay, so I go after here. One of the key principles, the key elements, and fact about conservation of monuments, and here, I mean, monuments is the term that for many decades identified cultural heritage, and this is a quote from the Venice Charter, which states that buildings and monuments, let's say now cultural heritage, needs to be used. So basically, the continuous use of a building or of a site or something makes possible the conservation of that building. Without the continued use, any cultural heritage place is going to be neglected, and is gonna lose the significance, because in the end it's gonna be forgotten, and it's very unlikely that that there will be economic investments or any sort of preservation and protection if there is no use of them. Even archaeological sites, I mean, they are not used in the classical sense of the term, but they are functional to understanding the culture of a place, and to support communities and sustainability and the sense of history and belonging to the place, of our story. Anyway, sorry for sometimes I don't have all the words in English, so if you don't understand or you need more clarification, please ask. So let's talk more now about built heritage maintenance interventions. Now that we have understood that we need to use those buildings, some buildings are not ready to be used unless we do some intervention on them. Being cultural heritage or heritage properties, they are such because they hold values and they hold a significance. So first and foremost, it's important that before intervening on those properties, we understand those values. So we understand where the significance is embedded in, and how and why those buildings are important to people. So why they are recognized as heritage properties. And also, we also need to have a clear understanding of what are the conservation principles. Conservation principles that have been discussed and now are internationally how do you say, embraced, or which are the concept, the principle of the minimal intervention. So we just want you to do the minimal intervention in order to use that building properly. The reversibility, and this is a kind of a difficult one, but I say that any intervention that we do on a building needs to be reversible, and needs to not undermine the significance of the building to the point that to compromise it. Needs to be legible, which means that we don't need to, if we need to do some things on the building, we don't need to pretend that intervention was done in kind of make fake cornices or things like that, just to hide conduit. whatever, just to make the intervention legible, of course, in a respectful way, but we need to read the layers when we get into a heritage building or outside a heritage building. It needs to be compatible, and here is its compatibility is it's a word that it's more related to the material compatibility. However, it's we can also talk about compatibility in terms of design, in terms of but in terms of materials, definitely some things that in this specific discussion here, it's important to state. So we need to use materials which are compatible with the heritage fabric, and if you will look after a few case studies, it's plenty of there is plenty of example where wrong intervention made the building worse than rather than repairing it. And then needs to be there is an interdisciplinarity, means that we need to work together with the engineer, with the structural, with the architect, and with the owner, and all the people that are involved into the intervention, into the maintenance, or into the intervention for adapting the building. And this is because we need to work with the building and its and the opportunities that the building gives to us in order to have a minimal intervention approach to be reversible. It's a synergic it's a synergic effort that we need to do. So that's so there are after talking about that, there are a few, of course, requirements that we need to balance, and that's the difficulty of being doing an intervention on a heritage property. So we need, on one side, we have the introduction of new elements, new system to adapt to new use or new standards. On the other side, we have the respect and the preservation of cultural significance and of the values that are embedded in the property. And also we have the sustainability requirement, the cost effectiveness, and meeting energy efficiency target, good state of repair, and functional use. So kind of we have a number of demanding tasks to do, and so a few reasons for introducing new elements are maybe we have to adapt the building to a new use, or we have a program updates to do, we have accessibility upgrades to do, or we have to adapt the building for human comfort, maybe means systems and heating or air conditioning, or so on and so forth. But we have on one side those requirements, and on the other side we have the preservation of heritage fabric. We have which include all the physical aspects of the building, interior and exterior. We can talk about building components, materials and characteristics, construction techniques, alteration over time. So we need to understand all this in order to do some things on the building. Structure and structural behavior, which is important. And last but is our requirements in terms of more practical requirements. Let's budget, upgrade on building services, environmental standards to meet and targets, code and waste management, material compatibility, again, health and safety requirements. These are just some. So we can say that between the introduction of new element and system and the preservation and the heritage fabrics, we need to understand that there is an alteration and an impact on the cultural significance of the property. So every time we introduce some things, we are making an impact on the significance of the building. It's all about understanding the impact and try to mitigate the impact while preserving the cultural heritage. This is a concept that we need to understand and to keep in mind every time we approach an intervention. And then there is also what we need to do. So in terms of, we have a budget, we have a project requirement, and so what is really important is understanding what we are dealing with. So the understanding part of what we are dealing with, and the analysis and the understanding of the building and of its system and the current conditions is really important and helps a lot into reducing the risk of realistic budgeting, realistic phasing, of schedule delays, incompatible interventions that often accelerate decay and loss of heritage fabric, and also, projects that are over budget. It's quite common having projects that are over budget, because one of the most common reason is because was not the analysis and the understanding of the existing building was not deep enough, and the condition was not deep enough. So anyway, I think I have to have a sip of water. Okay, so we talked about, so far I was talking about why we need to maintain things, and what we need to maintain, why, and let's say how, what are the principles. However, there are also reasons why we have deferred maintenance. Reasons are in lack of budget availability, lack of knowledge of specificity of the building construction system and related issues, inappropriate planning, maybe intervention were not understood and planned. Abstract priorities means that sometimes we have priority in program or things without thinking that there are requirements that a building may have that are first priority before our let's say priority in terms of upgrades. Let's say if there are water infiltration in a basement or some things, yes, we can think about upgrading the basement or upgrading the building or upgrading the system, but if we don't solve that problem, we can put some, I've seen plenty of cases where gypsum board or gypsum walls are there, hiding really, really bad condition of the masonry walls. So sometimes also, and then sometimes the problems are not visible because of this, because of later intervention that hide those conditions. And then also sometimes, depending on the type of building and the ownership, we have kind of a sharing responsibilities sometimes, so we don't really, there is not a clear responsibility. Nobody is responsible. The building is there, and one day someone will do some things. And then of course cost. In these photos we see the lack of maintenance of gutters and the wrong type of painting. Not only, but this is a gutter in concrete. This is a very special case here, and the concrete is completely gone. In another case here, we can see fluorescence and salt caused by the habit of putting salt in the winter for the snow, for the ice, cracks and fluorescence on a church here, and vegetation on growth on a roof. But these are just some of these things. So let's get now into the more the close to the topic of the discussion here is why we need a maintenance plan. We need a maintenance plan to prioritize and strategize cyclical maintenance interventions, to plan budget and phases, to ensure that the intervention to ensure that intervention and maintenance routines are compatible with the heritage fabric, to not compromise the condition of a building and its components, and of course to extend the lifespan of buildings, condition, and system, and to minimize intervention cost, because maybe, you know, with understanding the entire situation, we are able to plan and prioritize to plan phases so that to avoid waste of time and money into mobilization several times, because that's also another issue, another things that we need to add to the cost. Then, of course, to preserve as much as possible the historic fabric, so to repair rather than replace, which is always more expensive. And I think that's it. So what is a maintenance plan and what it addresses? A maintenance plan has a few key components. A few of them key components are guidelines. So we need to have guidelines on ordinary maintenance, not only on extraordinary interventions. Guidelines on how to paint, what type of paint to use, how to make, where are, I don't know, how, even treatments that we need to do to the wood or to the doors, or it's all part of the guidelines, because those are heritage fabric, historic fabric, and needs to be dealt with understanding requirements. Of course, there are priorities. So according to the condition of systems and components, we have different priorities. So I will say this is a key element of a maintenance plan. It needs to understand condition and needs to prioritize and to provide timelines for intervention. And of course, considering budget, and the budget is a budget that must be realistic. So this is it's important. And when we do a plan, the budget needs to identify the mobilization, identify contingency, identify everything needs to be in that specific intervention. It can be a painting or changing the windows or changing or whatever. And of course, also another thing that we need to understand is the required expertise, if required. Depending on the intervention, it may be handled by the property owner or the maintenance project manager, but sometimes there is a need of an expert, depending on the type of intervention and maintenance repair. Of course, we do this through there are ways to do this. So through clear communication and best practice design, which is again considering principles, considering all those requirements that we were that I just talked before. And then, of course, all these is All this leads to quality control, cost control, and risk control as well. That's all the kind of content of a maintenance plan, what it is, and what it includes. So we first and foremost, we need to understand the building. So all the documentation, the existing documentation is to be analyzed. Existing drawings, existing photos, whatever, needs to be analyzed and needs to be so that we understand or exist previous intervention, kind of having a good understanding of what we are dealing with. Then understanding the heritage fabric, the fabric, the material, having material inventory, so understanding what we are dealing with, and existing condition. We need to remember that material and condition are strictly related, of course. There is another thing that is important when we come to historic buildings: investigation. So we need also a good maintenance plan include recommendation for investigation or monitoring. Include specification on treatments that needs to be done that are maintenance. Of course, I'm not talking here about the intervention to adapt some things. The idea is that building has already been adapted. Now we need to maintain it over 30 years, 50 years. Cyclical maintenance schedule, realistic budget planning, implementation, and priorities. And that's important. Let's get to the first kind of documentation or understanding of the property. How we do this, what we consider. We need to consider first what is the building and the systems and components of the building. System, roof, foundation, wall, perimeter walls, structure, and windows, doors, etc., floors, and components of those systems, and of course materials. So it's kind of going from the bigger to the smaller items. Of course, decay phenomena and condition. Decay phenomena and condition are very much related to the type of materials and also to the system and how the components are assembled, are connected and assembled. For instance, in the first photograph I have, I cannot do, okay. In the first photograph below, on the second row, I have sandstone attacked, exfoliation of sandstone, which is caused by salt. And also by weathering. But in this case, there is a lot of fluorescence caused by salt. In the second photograph, I have cracking caused by, actually by the structure, by the way the structure of this building, by the way this building was built. So this is kind of a more a defect, let's say, rather than a decay. But it's also something that we need to deal with. In the third photograph, again, I have the windows and the lintel on the windows. There is a lot of fluorescence on these lintels. This is a building that I was working on, and the problem here is that the way the lintel is built, it allows water to penetrate into it and to get into it and to cause and especially, it seems weird, but in Halifax there are drifting rains in November. I think there are rains. The rain is kind of almost horizontal. So, and you will tell me, I didn't know this about before coming here, but this horizontal rain, it's actually penetrating into places that we never think about. So we have on the east elevation, we have a lot of problems, more than on other elevation, because of this particular phenomenon, and because of the particular way the lintel is built, was originally built. So, and also non-maintained. Then we can have rot wood. Wood is rotting, so this is a transom seal which is rot. So when the intervention here, depending on the extent of the rot, can be attachment repair or can be replacement in kind, depending on the extent. Let's talk about structural systems. This is all heritage fabric. These are all things that we need to think in terms of heritage fabric. So heritage is not only the cornices and the decoration; it's also this. It's structural. It's walls. It's fabric. It's building fabric. In fact, okay. So structural system. This is a roof. This is two type of. This is inside an attic. So this is actually a secondary roof that was placed on this building. Then the third photograph shows water penetration from a floor in a bell tower, and we see all the fluorescence and problems that this causes. Then we are in an attic, here in an attic, so these are trusses. This is Province House in PI. Then talking about structural system, talking about perimeter walls, we can have different type of perimeter walls, and each type of perimeter walls has their own decay. So we have perimeter walls which are in siding, wood, basically. Some part which are wood and brick, it's a second photo, or we have masonry in some other cases. And we can have bricks, or in more modern cultural heritage places, we can have even concrete or precast concrete. So I'm working on a project where we have concrete precast and brutally done in 1950s, 60s, and also 70s. Now all those architects, not all those architects, but some of those architecture in 1970s, 80s are becoming designated and cultural heritage. So we need to also deal with the different ways, different cultural heritage assets. But so this, again, continuing on the system components and materials, we have roof systems. We have flashing on system. It's a good practice, and especially in this climate, to prevent the water to get in. That's the key element. Prevent the water to get in, and currently the first photo is a new lead-coated copper flashing that we did at Lunenburg Academy. But the second and the other photo are existing modified roof, let's say flashing or waterproofing. Some of these are failing, and we need slowly to replace, and it's not actually a best practice to use a modified roof membrane. In some cases need to be used because of the financial viability and the budget reasons. But even in that cases, it's always important to understand how to use and how to make those interventions reversible. The third case is a case, I will have this as a case study. This is the connection of two roofs that it's become a clog of vegetation, and there is no drainage on this roof. It's a disaster a little bit. And on the same roof there is this chimney which is barely supporting itself. This is lack of maintenance, of course, deferred maintenance, cases of deferred maintenance. As I said, one of the most important elements in causes of decay is water. and water infiltration is often caused by drainage systems that don't work or have been blocked or are not cleaned or clogged. This is very much related to cyclical periodic maintenance, because I mean no drainage system will clog if it's going to be cleaned regularly. Then we have foundation system, masonry water infiltration of foundation systems. This is all the first line is plenty of it. A sample and decay that are caused by that. The second line instead we have interior walls, and again interior walls can be damaged, can be different assemblies. In the central photograph we have 1838, I think, or 58, I don't remember exactly the date, of wood lath into, this is an interior wall. This is an investigation that we did a few months ago into the Sacred Art Building School in Halifax, and we need to do an intervention. We need to do an intervention outside, and we need to understand how the veneer, which has been, it's kind of a case, how the veneer, the brick veneer is tied to the backup wall, and we discovered this very interesting original wood lath. So again, part of the building system are also windows, and windows are a kind of a let's say important element for many reasons, but in even for exterior, I mean, it's a functional. Most of the windows are in historic buildings. Most of intervention in the past don't allow for the windows to be opened. And air circulation is in some cases really in some cases is up to the HVAC systems. We are, I mean, what is really important is that we keep windows, we keep ventilation and natural ventilation in buildings through operable windows, and this is something that can address also climate change and energy efficiency and all these sustainable targets. But let's talk more about the technicality of deferred maintenance. What can cause deferred maintenance can cause having to do new windows, and so costly interventions. In these cases, we have actually in Lunenburg Academy, this one of the first examples here, we were able to maintain and repair most of the windows. Just a few windows were replaced, and this is actually good. And just a very few window boxes. These are all sash windows, original sash windows. In the third photograph, we have a sash window, original sash window on the Sacred Art buildings, the white one with the brick. And then we have also cases of I think we can have more of this. There is a pediment in the fourth photograph that has been waterproofed with membrane and lead-coated copper to, in the end, the pediment will look exactly like it was. However, all these waterproofing will enable to to keep the water away for many years. With the lead coated copper, we can say more than 50 years. Without replacing entirely the pediments, we are using most of the original wood and elements, unless they are rot to the point beyond repair, like some transom seals that we can see in the photo on the right top corner. Doors are also components, and again, doors and doors jamb are, especially when there are on exterior of buildings, are in this climate are often affected by salt, and the salt that the normal maintenance use for anti-slippery for the ice. So it would be good practice to avoid salt. As we see, this is a building in Halifax where those sandstone at the bottom of the entry door were changed in the second last photo on the bottom row. Were changed, I think, 7 years ago, I was told. And after 7 years of continuous use of salt, the decay, the fluorescence is huge. It's incredible here. So this is bad maintenance practice that we should address into a maintenance plan. Of course, a maintenance plan, we need to understand all the decay, and this is a way, I mean, kind of inventorying materials and inventorying type of decay, so that the plan will provide guidelines addressing specific cases in that building, of course. This is an example of identification of decay phenomena and conditions, and of course there is another element that needs to be addressed by it's important on maintenance plan is planning treatments. So we needs to understand what's going on and when maintenance needs to be done and how. So talking about ongoing maintenance schedules, cyclical maintenance, extraordinary circumstances or interventions in order to provide a very much needed guidance to property owners. And so this is one case study. It's a Lunenburg Academy that I'm working here at the SRA, taking over from Graham Duffus, who was working in Halifax, I think, for over 40 years. He's now semi-retired, so I'm taking. I'm honored of working on on some of these projects. So I took over Lunenburg Academy this year, which is a second phase, phase 2. And we see the windows. This is an example, a kind of barrel windows. We had the modified roof on the top of it with it's been flashed with the lead coated copper, and the way the flashing is this is not finished. This is a photo that I did over a site visit, but it shows you how the intervention is made. You know, things that still needs to be done. The cornice and the gutter here needs to be painted and fixed, as well as the corbelling. But you see, is it possible to work at heritage buildings without replacing everything? It's possible to even on wood buildings, which wood is very much critical. I mean, very delicate and sensible and it's fast decaying material compared to masonry or to stone. However, even on wood buildings, you can retain some of the original fabric when it's when you have continuous maintenance. If you don't get to the point that wood is going to be completely rot and beyond any repair. And we have cases here where it happened. So some of the, just an idea, some of the pediments were in very bad condition, as you can see, and those were replaced in kind. Some were where some elements instead were possible to repair, and therefore they were just dismantled. The entire part was waterproofed and cleaned, and then the pediment, just the case of the pediment, but this happened for bands, for corbels, for windows, window streams, and so on and so forth. This is a good intervention where we didn't replace everything. Let's say that the replacement was, I would say, less than 30% of the components, and it's almost at the end of the project. So this is another case study, and then I think I don't know if, do I have 5 minutes more, or it's Rachel?
Yes, you're fine.
Okay, so this is another case study. This is some things that we are just starting this. I'm just starting this project. This is a concrete house in Centreville in Nova Scotia. This is the first house built in concrete in Nova Scotia by Charles MacDonald. There was a communist. Anyway, the story behind this person is an artist. So it's kind of important person, so has also historic values embedded into it rather than only scientific values, this house. And we can see here a lot of problems related to deferred maintenance. Addition of secondary roof, blocking with the addition of soffit and fascia without allowing ventilation has brought to has caused the complete decay of wood beams. In fact, we can see in the photo with the windows that wood beams are, the head of the wood beams are not existing anymore. They were covered by soffit and the fascia. And there was a lot of, the rot wood is basically, I think this is, we are starting now to understand how we can make a conservation project and rehabilitation project over this place to try to save as much as building fabric as possible and to make it a place that can be continued to use. This is now a museum of concrete. This is these are just a few photos, so you can see the attic part, and this is the secondary roof that was added on the top of the flat roof. And this place here in the central photo is just became a place for Critel to get in, and that's it's really in a bad shape. I mean, it's a very challenging project, this one, and also is a community. It's run by a community association, so it's not going to be. We need funding, and so it's always. So there is a challenging. Also include budget availability, and so. But this is a challenge that we will face. I'm gonna do this year. We'll see. In phases, of course. This is just an example, and. So to conclude, I will say that a maintenance plan should communicate clearly what are the requirements. So clear specifications, clear drawings, clear clear everything in order to talk to the property owner and to the property, to whoever has to do the job, depending if it's ordinary maintenance or not. Technical enough, contain technical information to be able to enable correct intervention. To be strict enough to consider and be considerate of conservation principles behind interventions, and as well as considering realistic budgets, availability, and planning. And with this, I will say that I think I'm open to questions, and I hope I deliver. I mean, I shared with you the importance of having a maintenance plan. Yeah, so there's a few resources that you can look at, and questions.
Thank you, Rosa. Again, if you have any questions, you can type those questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, or you can raise your hand on the participation. I believe that's where you raise your hand. I'm looking at a different screen to everyone else. But if you have any questions, just those two approaches. And while we're waiting to see if we have any questions, I'd just like to mention that relevant information regards to grants that the municipality and the province offer to heritage property owners. So there are two different types of grants. There is grants regarding conservation advice. So you can employ a architect, engineer, or other professional that can offer builds conservation advice, and both the provincial government and the municipality offer grants to help pay for those services. And there is also grants available for actual physical work to buildings, and those would be to the exterior envelope of the building. But if your maintenance plan was to identify anything that needed to be addressed, then there are those grants available to kind of help you pay for those costs.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that part. I was not aware of specifically what was it, but yes, those are really important. And in the case of the concrete house, we also used some grants, and we are still using some of those. Try to find funding for that project. I mean, that's the challenge that is common to any conservation intervention. Any intervention, I mean.
I'm seeing no questions, but I'm also wondering if anyone has any examples of maintenance plans that they themselves have undertaken for their properties, and kind of whether they found that, I guess, you know, their experience of preparing those maintenance plans.
Yeah. Easy.
So I do have some comments here. It's a comment from Arthur MacDonald, and he said, "Great presentation, Rosa. Thank you." There's also a comment from Erin. In the example of the sandstone that has decayed because of the use of salt, what stone could have been used instead, and would granite have not decayed?
No, I think all the stone decay have some kind of phenomenon of decay phenomenon with salt, and the best thing would have been, of course, there are stones that have different levels of decay. The sandstone, that type of sandstone, maybe it's a faster decay phenomenon, but I will say that salt, unfortunately, is the enemy of building materials, and the good practice would be using de-icing materials that don't contain salt, and then also the building was built in sandstone. So there are different type of sandstone. Sandstone is so needs to understand maybe there would be needs to do a research needs to be done to understand what type of sandstone is less subject to decay. Is more there are different sandstone, more or less more or less how do you say, containing more or less lime. So according to that, there is a different reaction. However, if the building is a sandstone, if you want to replace it with another stone, you're gonna alter the aesthetic of that building. And if this is an heritage building, but even if it's not an heritage building, you have to deal with that aspect as well. So it's always a balance. You can do different things to address the problem. So you know, it's if you want to continue to put salt there, you are going to fade. Either keep the building with that fluorescence and that decay, or the best thing would be try to find a way to avoid that, and as well as try to find a material which is which supports and reacts better, but a material that is compatible with that aesthetic value, let's say, and that building as well, and the environmental condition as well. So it's a complex answer. It's not a simple answer generally. Thank you.
I do have another couple of comments here from Don and Linda Forbes, and they're saying that in their experience, it's often difficult to detect previously poorly done intervention, particularly in a wooden building, until a certain amount of material is removed. And these surprises are always to be expected. So a fair amount of allowance for the unexpected needs to be planned for. And then they go on to also note that because we're mostly dealing with wooden buildings when working on private homes here,
yes,
the lack of old growth wood is a real problem. How are you dealing with this in Lunenburg?
We are that's a different case. I mean, because it being an institutional building, definitely there is more funding available. So we are yes, there have been unexpected and additional cost, because of course this has due to a few factors. The project started a few years ago, and without scaffolding and just with a drone fly was really difficult to understand the real condition of the wood above the first floor. So that's really that's something that it's so I would say I can't stop stressing on how important, and then maybe also I was not there, but also funding availability, that's another issue. The windows, so the wood is being replaced in kind, so we are finding the same wood, but the wood has been replaced just for shingles and siding, a few windows, and so I mean, yes, there is more there's additional scope. There is definitely additional cost. There has been additional cost over the intervention, but I would say that that intervention is kind of exceptional, because it's also it's a building that is being done for many years. So I don't know if my answer addressed the questions. Huh?
Did anyone else have any questions or comments?
Yeah, and then yes, yeah, we didn't, of course, we didn't replace items with the old wood. I mean, old growth wood. That's a difference that you can see the difference if you go close to the replacement to the replaced Dutchman repair or to the replaced piece. But again, this is part of the can be part of the legibility, but can be also part of the normal process of intervention. We do not necessarily need to do everything in the same way it was done.
I have another really great question from Don and Linda Forbes, and they're asking, are you doing any extra treatment to prolong the life of new wood? Typically, 100-year-old wood is more rot resistant than new.
In that specific place, no, we are not doing a specific treatments to the wood. No. To prolong the life. I mean, we can do treatments to the existing wood for bioseed treatments, but it's bioseed treatments, yes, but the treatment to prolong the life of a piece of wood is avoiding water infiltration and allowing for ventilation. I think that's those are the most important elements that needs to be considered when you deal with historic buildings. You don't want to create condition for water to penetrate, and you don't want to create condition for water to get on the humidity to get in and don't get out. So the most important things that needs to be understood is that don't create the condition for the rot to be there. And yeah, those are the most yeah, I would say those are the most important elements. It's how things are done rather than putting a chemical treatment on it, on the wood.
Yeah, I'm seeing no more questions, Rosa. I think, yep, I think we've addressed all the questions that have come in.
There are more. I mean, I'm here. If you can get more questions, then I can address those over the next few days by email.
So thank you very much, Rosa. That was a really interesting presentation.
Thank you.
I hope everyone else enjoyed the presentation. So as I noted at the beginning, we are going to be uploading the presentation or this webinar actually to our website, so that I know that there were people that were unable to attend tonight and they were really interested to hear the presentation. So we will be uploading that in the next few days. And if you want to drop me an email, that's rgilbert, RGILBERT @easthants.ca. I can send you an email once that information has been uploaded to our website. Otherwise, yeah, thank you very much, Rosa.
Thank you for inviting me, and yeah, I hope this has been useful too.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you.